Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the Rangers podcast by fans, for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. We're coming to you in association with Forest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always guys, we'd encourage you to get onto the newly polished Gersnet website and check out our forums for all your latest Rangers news and discussion. We've now surpassed the 6,000 subscriber mark on the YouTube channel, but as always, we'd ask that you continue to share the pod on social media and spread the word. And if you're not one of the 6,000 plus subscribers, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guest tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the pod. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forestprecisioneng.com. And they also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand. And for more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest tonight. And I'm joined tonight by Mr. Transfers himself, Dougie Kinnear. Dougie, how are you doing? And how excited are you now that Rangers have made their first summer signing?
Evening, Brian. Happy Friday, everyone. It's a glorious day in Glasgow. I hope it is where everyone is listening tonight. How am I doing? How's the transfers? Good to get started, Brian. Good to get the first one underway. It's going to be a very busy summer. I think Kieran Dell was a good start, but I think the biggest and best transfers are still to come.
I'll take your word on it. You're my official transfer source, so I'm going to take that as kind of official transfer news. As you mentioned there, with Rangers unveiled Kieran Dell there on Wednesday night. Now, everybody on this show and on the podcast knows that you love a transfer, Dougie, so I'm going to assume that you've watched countless hours of Kieran Dell on YouTube. So I just wanted your take on the signing, what you think of him and what we should be expecting from him.
I have. I love a transfer rumour. The first thing I do when we see a new name appear is go straight on YouTube and watch the footage. Kieran Dell's obviously, I think he's 25 years old, so he's got his best years ahead of him as he comes to Rangers. I think what to expect from him, he's a left footer. He can play midfield to front. He's probably a direct replacement for Scott Arfield, in my opinion. He's someone who can run past the midfield and break the lines, but he has been known to play wide as well. Interestingly, I can't remember the stats. I don't have them in front of me, but when I was looking at the stats, he hasn't scored a great deal this season for Norwich. You can't always judge players on the performance at Norwich, as we know and have learned from Mr. Cantwell. So we won't write a player off straight away. There's the usual negativity amongst some supporters that we've brought in Kieran Dell, and I think it's because everyone just wants to see those big unveilings. As I said earlier on, I think it's a good, solid start. My take on Dowell is I don't think Dowell will be a regular starter. When I say about him replacing Arfield, I think in more ways than one. I think what you're getting is a very similar player, but also somebody else who can just straight like for like replace his role within the team, and hopefully have a very similar impact from the bench, because Scott Arfield is an absolutely fantastic impact player. What else do we know about Kieran Dell? He's someone that Michael Beale knows about, and Michael Beale spoke about it in his press conferences in terms of you'll be able to link certain players back. He came through the Everton Youth Academy and was very highly regarded. He had a number of loan spells, but it's his performances for England that grabbed my attention, to be honest. He's played at every single level up to under-21, so he played on a number of occasions for England. You can't be a bad player if you're representing England at all those levels. So I think we're getting a good player. I think the big caveat with Kieran Dell is his fitness. I think that's the biggest concern I have. We're getting a good player, someone who's technically very good. He's going to be versatile, which I think is going to be very important to us. But I think the reason why he's never really kicked on in his career is just because injuries have held him back. So that's the concern. But let's hope we get the best years out of him and we see a Todd Cantwell version 2.0.
It wouldn't be a Rangers signing without a mention of a history of injuries with it.
Well, I think the realistic thing there, Brian, is we're not going to sign guys that are English Premiership regulars and, standouts in one of the top 4 teams of the Premiership. We're going to have to take risks, and those risks will be in players like Cantwell that have lost their way, guys that are recovering from an injury or haven't played a lot of football recently. We're going to have to take risks, and Kieran Dowell is a risk, but I think he's a risk worth taking.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting one for me. I'm just kind of excited now to get the pre-season started. We've not even finished this season and I'm already totally buzzing for the game against Newcastle, the friendly, just to see some glimpse of some of the new players. Now, you mentioned the comparisons with Scott Arfield there. He was obviously one of the 5 players that got a send-off at Ibrox on Wednesday night, along with Lander, Kent, McGregor and Morelos. I didn't manage to make it to the game on Wednesday night, but did you think that they got a kind of fitting send-off? And what would you say the kind of legacy those players have left?
Yeah, I was there, Brian, and I'll be honest, I was a wee bit more emotional than I thought I would be during the game and at full time. I think when you look at the 5 players that are leaving, you go through them individually, they've all had a big impact on Rangers and Alan, I was going to say kind of in recent years, but Alan McGregor's over a much longer period. When you go through them individually, Alan McGregor, you could sit here and argue all night who's the greatest ever Rangers goalkeeper. Andy Gorham had 2-3 years where he was arguably the best in the world. Over a longer period in his service to Rangers, Alan McGregor has been a phenomenal servant. So to see Alan McGregor retire, he looked emotional during the game. I think you can certainly see it in his interview post-match. I felt a wee bit emotional saying our goodbyes to Alan McGregor.
Has he announced that he's retiring? Sorry, I might have missed that. Is he announced that he's hanging up his gloves, or is he just leaving Rangers?
It's a great question. I mean, he said he loves Rangers, and this is him. I just assume. I don't think he's actually used the word retirement, but I think it's just the assumption he's not going to play.
That'll be interesting to see. I've never actually thought about it until you mentioned it there, but it'll be interesting to see if he goes into coaching, or I don't know if he's got ambitions in coaching, but it'll be interesting to see on that one.
Yeah, you go through the rest of the players. Morelos is obviously the next big one. They were the kind of biggest cheers as the players came out at full time. McGregor, obviously, the Union Bears were singing their songs at the end when the players were doing their lap of honour. But Morelos got a big cheer as well, as you would expect. He looked genuinely gutted he didn't get a goal. McGregor looked raging that he conceded too. I'm going to miss Morelos. Whether you could sit here all night around and talk about the players individually of, Kent, Morelos, whether they gave us enough. They had so much promise. They could have kicked on and gave us so much more. Morelos, I've just spoken about Alan McGregor being arguably one of our greatest ever goalkeepers. He's just been inducted in the Hall of Fame. Alfredo Morelos, for all his faults, is our top European goal scorer. That's an amazing feat of achievement. So there we're losing 2 great players. Ryan Kent, you're losing our most expensive player in over a decade, since Tony Flo, I believe, is the highest transfer outlay on Ryan Kent. So we're losing a big asset, as we are with Morelos. I think there's a bit of recency bias about certain players, and I think it really comes into play with Ryan Kent. I think because Ryan Kent hasn't been great this season, his numbers haven't been great. I think a lot of people remember the Celtic performance at Hampden, where he was utterly dreadful, if truth be told. But I think a lot of people are judging him based on recent performances, and I think that's a little bit unfair, because Ryan Kent was a fantastic servant. I spoke about watching The Road to Seville recently on YouTube, and I kind of called it out around Tav, and you see just how important Tav was in that. But you just need to look at that and you can see the real quality of Ryan Kent. I shoved into YouTube, when you put in new transfer rumours and you want to look at them on YouTube to see what they're like. I thought for a laugh I'd type in and see what some of our players' YouTube compilations are like. And Ryan Kent, when you sit and you watch it, some of his goals are massive, massive goals. Some of his plays massive. He ripped Borussia Dortmund apart. He was. I remember him
turning Akanji inside out. He's now playing at Man City, or on for a treble this season.
Exactly.
And Ryan Kent absolutely turned them inside out.
And there's some people saying our squad's not good enough. That squad is pretty much the same squad that got to a European final. Ryan Kent's just not hit form this season, but he loved that goal against Celtic, and that comes through. in the clip. So we're losing another big player. Philippe Hollander. I think Philippe Hollander's just a brilliant centre back. I listened to the post match pod between Colin and Alex the other night, and I think it was Alex kind of made the point both about Hollander and Roof as a comparison, that if they didn't have their injury problems, they wouldn't be at Rangers. That's the quality of Philippe Hollander, and it's no coincidence that we had our best season when guys like Hollander and Roof were fit for the majority of the season. Hollander's a rock, and when you watch his video again, not only is he a solid centre-back, but he was dangerous at set pieces, and he got that goal against Celtic, which kind of stands out for me as well. So another great player that we're losing. But I think, interestingly, one of the biggest cheers and the crowd erupted when he came off the bench and they were singing his song was Scott Arfield. And, you're talking about Alan McGregor, a club legend, retiring. You're talking about Morelos, a top goal scorer in European football, leaving us. Ryan Kent, as I just said, our highest net spend in years. Scott Arfield was a freebie from Burnley. And I think it kind of speaks volumes for Scott Arfield. Again, in the post-match pod, I heard Colin Armstrong basically say that he just adores Scott Arfield. It's just, he's not necessarily the best player, but he just characterises everything it takes about being a Ranger. He's a hard worker. He goes to work with a smile on his face, and he's an absolute gentleman. And I seen a post on, I think it was Follow. I seen a post basically saying that there was a wee girl standing outside Ibrox after the game, where she was waiting on Scott Arfield to come out because Scott Arfield's her favourite player. She was in tears because she's devastated that he's leaving. And Todd Cantwell was the first player to come out of Ibrox and clock her. And Todd Cantwell went over to this wee girl, picked her up, gave her a cuddle. He didn't have any of his kit on him, so he couldn't give her anything like that, but he gave her his baseball cap. And I think that kind of gives me some encouragement that we're losing a big character in the dressing room like Scott Arfield, but we've got somebody like Todd Cantwell now who just gets it. He gets it on the pitch, but he gets it off the pitch as well. The importance of fans, the importance of younger fans. And I think it's brilliant to have somebody like Todd Cantwell come in, and I think he'll pick up a lot of that Scott Arfield persona that he has. But Scott Arfield will be a big loss, and I love the quote from Scott Arfield in his Rangers TV interview where he says he'll be back. In some capacity, at some point in his life, he will be back at Rangers. And I made the point on Twitter that for so many years, post-2012, we've not had anyone at the club that you would say, you're welcome back. I think I would go down a full rabbit hole of Lee Wallace. I think the way that the club handled that situation is very, very poor. He's probably the only one in that period that you think you could come back in a club ambassador role, for example, in the future. I look at someone like Scott Arfield and I just think, seeing years to come, you could come back as a coach or as a club ambassador. I think there'll be a role for Scott Arfield to play again in the future, and I welcome him back with open arms. He was a brilliant servant to the club. Yeah,
definitely. You've mentioned kind of losing two assets there in Kent and Morelos. Is there a bit of lessons that need to be learned here by Rangers in terms of what that's us now letting two once high value assets leave for nothing? Now, regardless of your opinions on Morelos and Kent this last season, we can all agree that at their peak, these were players that could have and maybe should have earned Rangers quite a healthy profit. Surely this can't be allowed to be happening again.
Yeah, there's massive lessons to be learned. I think there's two very important points to be made about it though as well, which kind of offsets the lessons that need to be adopted. Lesson number one is the big bids that we know of in the public domain came in the pre-season heading into the year that we won Title 55. Those bids were rejected by Steven Gerrard outright because he said that those players were integral to his team in winning the league. And if you hear the interviews from Jermaine Defoe, I don't know if you've ever seen one that he done on Sky Sports, but he said that the whole vibe and the dressing room that get into that summer, into that season, was just, we're winning this league. We've got them. This is the year that we've built our squad. We're happy with our squad, but the players like each other. They know each other. They were ready to win 55, and I think it's got to be said that whilst you're looking at hindsight now of you're losing two great players for nothing, and you had a plus £10 million bid for each of them, it's poor business from that perspective. But I tell you what, I'd take that poor business all day long if it meant that we won 55 in that moment of 55 and the importance of 55 as well. The second bit of it as well, and I think we're going to face into it with guys like Connor Goldson this summer. There could have been talk about interest in Goldson this summer. The fact that Connor Goldson is injured means that clubs will not come knocking on Connor Goldson's door. I say that with no knowledge at all, but clubs won't come looking for a player that's injured for 10 weeks during the summer and will come out at the end of the pre-season. Clubs want to sign players that are ready to hit the ground running, and I think when you look at Morelos, particularly last summer, after we got to the Europa League final, not a lot of people were going to talk to Morelos because he hadn't played in months and he was carrying an injury and he wasn't going to be ready for the beginning of the season. So I think the timing of the bids and the timing of when we wanted to sell just didn't align to Ryan Kent and Alfredo Morelos. There's an argument that at certain points you should just be offering them out and just asking for something back in return. And I think that's what we're going to see potentially with guys like Glenn Kamara this year. You know, I spoke about it recently of a number of players in their Rangers careers have had very high valuations. At one point, I would have been looking for £10 million for Glenn Kamara. But realistically, we'll probably have to accept about £2.5 million for Glenn Kamara this year. If we want the summer overhaul that all our fans are demanding right now, we'll probably just have to be realistic and accept lesser bids for players at times. And that's probably the reality is that you don't always get a big bid for a Calvin Bassett, a big bid for a Nathan Patterson. Sometimes you've just got to choose your moment of when to cash in. And I hate to compare us to our local team across the other side of the city, but Celtic have done that time and time again, and that's the benchmark for me. You know, people laugh at the likes of Juranovic. They only get £8 million in the end for Juranovic when they were talking about 20 at one point. But Celtic realised that they had a guy lined up in Alistair Johnston that they could go and sign for £2-3 million and make a £5 million profit. And they had that confidence that next player was as good as the player that they were selling. That's the mindset that I think the club need to get into. But I think as supporters, we need to be realistic as well.
Yeah, for me, there's definitely lessons to be learned around the right time to sell players when they're at their highest value. So it's definitely something that I think we should kind of take away from this, and the club kind of need to look at and reevaluate them. Focusing on matters on the park on Wednesday night, it was another kind of disappointing one for me. You know, losing silly goals through our own defensive mistakes, and yet again we kind of create enough chances to win a couple of games of football, and we just don't take them. To me, I don't know what you think, but to me it seemed like that was our season in a microcosm.
Yeah, summed it up nicely, didn't it? We were put at the back and couldn't take our chances. It just sums us up this season. There was positives to take in the game, as there always is if you look at it. Honestly, I think the major positive I can see Frankie's given Todd Cantwell man of the match. I think that's just undisputed. Todd Cantwell was excellent again. The chance that Todd Cantwell had and he wanted to score from, I don't think you would fancy any other Rangers player running through and goal at that point and finishing it as easily as Todd Cantwell did. Certainly not Sakala. I think you'd be ducking for cover if you're behind that Bromley Road stand. Todd Cantwell's a brilliant player. He played well. I think we're really seeing Nico Raskin settle into a Rangers jersey right now. I think the last couple of games, Nico Raskin's looked very, very good, and it's so encouraging that our 2 January signings, who are both very young and have their best years ahead of them and are huge assets, are hitting the ground running right now. I think we build the team around them next year, and hopefully we see them play their best football in their career at us next year. And to the point previously around cashing in, I think if we're being realistic, if Todd Cantwell goes on and improves on his performances so far, we're going to get bids for these guys. So yeah, Todd Cantwell, Raskin were good. The last one that I would call out, just as a special mention, is Leon King. I was looking at social media when the team was announced, and there was so much negativity about Leon King, about how he's just not good enough to be a Rangers player. I thought Leon King came in and did a very good job. And I've made this point so many times that I think as a fan base, we expect every single youngster coming through to be as good as Derek Ferguson or Derek Johnston were at 16, and they need to come in and they need to be world class. I mentioned earlier on that 1992 when Man United went on to win or the class of '92 when Man United were building what went on to be a very successful team. That team was built around some superstars, but in amongst those superstars, you also had bench players like John O'Shea and Wes Brown, who were able to come in and contribute. I think guys like Leon King have got a massive role to play at this football club for years to come if we can manage them right. I think we really hung guys like Leon King out to dry this season. It feels like a lifetime ago, that Champions League run. But I think when you're playing against Liverpool and your partner like alongside James Sands, who's a central midfield player and half the height of me, you're exposing an 18, 19-year-old coming into the team. So I feel sorry and I have sympathy for Leon King with that. I think his mentality and his attitude has allowed him to bounce back from that. And I think he's came in and he's done well in the games that he's played. And people are saying they feel nervous about having Leon King as a fourth choice centre back next year. If the centre backs ahead of him are good and fit, fourth choice centre backs no bother for Leon King. We've really, I said this to my dad the other day, we've been so unlucky this season with injuries. We can't be as unlucky next season as we have this season. Guys like Connor Goldson have missed so many games, and at the same time that Connor Goldson was out, you had Davies recovering from an injury, and you had Suter out for his injury, and you were then using a centre mid and an 18-year-old. And that, let's hope that doesn't happen again next season, and we've got luck on our side. And I think we're seeing the effects across our side of the city of what it means when you're just missing one or two players. All of a sudden, the wheels come off, and that's the importance of your key members of the squad. So if Connor Goldson is available, for example, and John Suter's available for the majority of the season, and they play at the levels that they've been, or in particular Suter's playing at the level that he's been at of late, I think King's no bother at fourth choice centre back. But the last thing I would say on that as well is, if we go and we sign someone like Dijon Sterling, who's linked with us, for example, his flexibility is a huge asset because he can play anywhere across the back. So if you've got your two fit fullbacks and your first choice centre back pairing are not available, it may be that you don't have to call on Leon King to come in and play because Dijon Sterling can play there as well. I think he'll fill the Calvin Bassey void of a guy that can kind of cover full back and centre back. But I think we really missed the pace out from the back when it came to Calvin Bassey. They, be able to grab the ball and just carry it forward. I think we've really missed that. And I think where Dijon Sterling will give that if he does sign, I think we'll also potentially see a similar type of asset where if we do sign someone like Austin Trusty from Arsenal, I think we'll get that. But I think the point being is there's a lot to be positive about the game, but there's also things to be negative about. I think we were just speaking before the show that it really, really angered me that we conceded 2 cheap goals. And if you see Alan McGregor's post-match interview, it angered Alan McGregor as well. He looked raging in his last game for Rangers that he conceded 2 cheap goals. The first one, James Tavernier just heads it straight to the defender, to the attacker, who's got a fairly easy finish. Frustratingly, in the build-up to that, before the ball goes out for a throw-in, the Hearts player up front miles offside, so the officials who were terrible in the game should have called that off before, but because of the rules of the game, because it went out of play and the game restarted, when VAR looked at it, he was onside in the end. So the goal stood, but it shouldn't have stood if the official was doing his job in the first place. But the second goal is the biggest frustration for me. And actually, I'm a huge Ryan Jack fan, but it's not the first time in recent weeks that Ryan Jack has cost us. Ryan Jack has given away a few cheap balls that's allowed shots on target. He should have just put the ball straight up the line. When you're kind of 90 plus 4 minutes on the clock, just put the ball up the line. And by not doing that and by doing something stupid, playing a cross ball, it's allowed and welcomed Hearts to come at us, and they've taken advantage of it. So frustrating goals to concede, but the biggest frustration for me is kind of twofold. One, Alan McGregor didn't get his moment of claiming another clean sheet. He'll leave knowing that he conceded 2 goals, and that annoys me. But two, and I mentioned this on the pod that I was on Sunday, that no team has went through and won all 5 games post-split since the top and bottom 6 split came into football and into Scottish football, and I wanted us to be that team. So I'm really disappointed by that, but still hugely encouraging that Celtic get beat against Hibs, which means since Michael Beale has taken over at Rangers. Rangers have more points than Celtic. It's very, very small. It's very, very petty. But it's all about building momentum into next season. And right now, it feels like we are building something for next season. And it feels like when you watch the James Bisgrove interview on Sky as well, it feels like there's a wee bit of a buzz about the club right now. And let's hope we get this right in the summer, because we need to get that trophy back at Edmiston Road. Right.
Yeah, it definitely feels like there's a bit of freshness going into the kind of club in the summer. Now, you mentioned Leon King there as someone that's impressed you. Someone that's impressed me in recent weeks, and I want your take on where you think his position in the squad is for next season, and that's Ridvan Yilmaz. For me, I think he should be a starting left back. I know Borna Barisic, there's probably nobody in the league that can deliver a ball like Barisic when he's on his game, but the thing that's impressed me about Yilmaz is his energy to get up and down the line, and his variation. He's not just a kind of take a touch and whip a ball in. He'll kind of pick a ball out. He'll try and play a low cross in. We've seen him have a couple of shots as well. So he's really impressed me in his variation. Where do you think his position is going into the new season?
Yeah, I agree. I said it on Sunday. I think Yilmaz has came in and he's put a really good claim in. Interesting, I'd heard noises that Michael Beale didn't fancy Yilmaz, but Michael Beale made it clear that everyone was going to get their chance before the end of the season, that needed to prove something, and I think he's proven right now that he is a good player and should be in contention. There's a lot of noise back in Turkey about Galatasaray interest. Based on his performances right now, I would keep him. And you called out his probably his biggest weakness there in comparison to Borna. Borna's got a great left foot. Yeah. Borna's delivery is absolutely first class. Yilmaz's delivery has been poor. That's his big development area for me. But interestingly, you mentioned there about the low cross. I think his low crosses are far superior than his kind of high balls into the box. Yeah. But I do think he's the type of guy that doesn't just get to the byline and just whip a cross in the way that Borna does. I think he tends to look up and see where he wants to put the ball. And I think that's a good asset to have when you're playing for Rangers, because it shows a calmness, a composure and a confidence in your own ability. If he can improve his distribution, I think he'll be a very good player. Defensively, I think he looks good. He's fast. And for a wee guy, he gets off the ground and he wins his fair share of headers. When I seen his link with Yilmaz, and originally I thought we were going to get somebody kind of small and tenacious the way that Raskin is. He hasn't proved to be as tenacious as what I thought, but he's good in the challenge. So he's impressed me from that perspective. Between Borna and Yilmaz, I can understand why Michael Beale stuck with Borna up to this point in terms of the experienced pro. Borna's actually not let Michael Beale down since he's came in. But there's a big question mark to be raised on Borna Barisic going into this summer, and it's the question mark of who is the first choice left back going into next season, because Borna only has 12 months left of his contract. And going back to our earlier conversation about knowing when the right time is to sell a player, if we are not going to offer Borna a new contract, we need to sell Borna Barisic this summer. And if we sell Borna Barisic this summer, Ridvan Yilmaz is your first choice left back.
Definitely agree. We've spoken about Cantwell and kind of his impact and how we've all been impressed with how well he's doing since he's coming to the club. One of the things that's impressed me most of all is his ability to score goals. I didn't necessarily see him as a natural goal scorer when he came in, but he's fair racking up the goals since he came in, especially in the last couple of weeks. So all good signs for next season. But with my next point, I don't want it to appear like I'm trying to sell our players, but is there a genuine worry that he's so good that we might struggle to hang on to him for a year or two? To me, he seems like he's almost too good for the SPFL. So should there be a genuine worry amongst fans that he is a player that might not be around for as long as we'd want him to be?
Believe it or not, I have a sensible Celtic supporting friend. I know that's hard to believe, but he posted on Twitter today from Cancun, unfortunately. But he posted on Twitter today that the interest in Ange is a positive. It's a compliment because it shows that he's performing, and he would rather Ange be performing, winning silverware for Celtic and having that interest because he has done his job than the opposite. And the same applies for me. If Todd Cantwell goes on and has a season next year like he's having right now, which I think is probably the best period of his career consistently. So that the challenge for him next season is doing that regular. And I think that's the challenge that needs to be set on Todd Cantwell. If he can do that regularly next season, we are talking a very high English Premiership team that comes in for him, not a Southampton, for example. So I think we want him to perform next season, and we welcome bids, because it shows that our players are doing the business for us. And I tell you what, if Todd Cantwell does, what he's doing right now next season, we'll win the league, and I will happily sell players and allow players to move on from the club once they've got a league winners medal in their pocket and they leave as winners.
That's definitely a kind of sensible approach, and probably one that we need to adopt in terms of, bids for our players means that they're doing well, which means Rangers are doing well and winning silverware. One of the other things that caught my eye in the kind of post-match press conference was Beale made a point to call out the kind of narrative being set by the media around Cantwell and the challenge on him at the weekend. There was loads of debate about, did they go down softly or was it a foul? As far as I know, you can't put your two hands on somebody's chest and push them to the ground and it not be a foul, but anyway, they'll still have a debate around it. But for me, it was refreshing to see the manager just call that out straight away and kind of bat it away. Is this something that the club need to kind of jump on quickly and stamp out that narrative that's they're kind of trying to set?
100%. 100%. I think with Cantwell, I love the fact that nobody likes him. I love the fact that opposition supporters don't like him, because it means he's doing well for Rangers and no one likes us. So it means that we've got somebody. What I should have said before about Cantwell is I think Cantwell's head and shoulders above everyone else in this league. I think he's the best player in the league, and I think they're scared. And I think because they're scared, there's a narrative building around Todd Cantwell. Alex actually asked me a similar question on Sunday, and I left kicking myself because I had a stat, and I'm now kicking myself because I don't have the stat in front of me. But it was something along the lines of, in all the years that Todd Cantwell played for Norwich, he picked up 4 yellow cards. And in his last 7 games for Rangers, pre-Hearts, he picked up 6 yellow cards. So the question was put around, is there a narrative or is he just feisty at the moment? He's young, he's impressionable, he's wanting to make that impression on his supporters, and he's getting carried away just now with the passion. I think there's truths in both parts just now. I think he is. I think he's working his arse off. I really do. I think I'm with you. When we signed Todd Cantwell, I was expecting a luxury player. I wasn't expecting this hard worker that was prepared to put the boot in. And I'm loving it. But with that, you'll get bookings. And I'm prepared to have our players get booked. But let's be fair. Let's be consistent. The free kick award that was being referenced there, it's a free kick. How anyone can deny that as a free kick is just against Hibs is just utterly bonkers. And we talk about narrative all the time, and it's important the club jump on it, because in the Celtic game of that same weekend, I can't remember who it was, but it was a blatant dive in the box, claiming for a penalty, and it wasn't given. And it's so frustrating that the focus then is on Todd Cantwell, who was genuinely fouled. And there was actually a very similar foul in the Hearts game, where I think it was Tav put his arms on a player very similar to it, and he went down and he got a foul. Where's the noise and where's the outrage at that? So yeah, completely peed off with the narrative being built around Todd Cantwell. I fully support Michael Beale coming out and defending his player, and long may it continue, because whilst it continues, it means he's doing a good job, and they're scared of him. And it's been a long time since we've had somebody that you can say is the best player in the league, comfortably the best player in the league.
Yeah, they don't tend to build these narratives around players that aren't going to do much damage, and they don't see as a threat. So it tends to be when they try and build these narratives around players, it's because they know they're really good players and there's a bit of fear around them. So I guess from that point of view, you can see it as a positive. For me, it's just important that the club kind of jump all over it and just stamp it out, because we've seen before what happens when Morelos, the narrative that was built around him and things like that. And we shouldn't be going down that road against these types of quality players. We don't often get them up here, and we should enjoy them while we've got them and celebrate them, and not making that arguing of, well, did he go down easily or was he in fact actually pushed to the ground? For me, we should be celebrating these types of players. Right, before we finish up, we'll have a quick look at the game at the weekend against St Mirren. For me, this was just important to end the season with a win. But I wanted to get your take on the team lineup. Do you expect any surprises? Is there anybody in the academy you'd like to see start? For me, I'm all over giving Alex Lowry a start in this one. And maybe a last Rangers appearance for some of the departing players.
Do you know, see on the latter point around the departing players, I don't think we should play any of the departing players. I think they got their send-off at Ibrox. So, Al McGregor, they shouted over the tannoy that it would be his last game for Rangers, so I don't think he'll play. I think McCrory will play. The fact that he done the press conference as well, which, by the way, I thought McCrory was excellent in his press conference. The way that he spoke about the manager has told him there will be another goalkeeper signing, and he is up for the challenge. I loved his attitude in that press conference. But I think McCrory will start. I think it's a no-brainer. I think the only one that's a question mark is possibly Morelos. And the only reason why he's a question mark is because we don't have any other fit number 9s. But I probably lean into the same lineup that Frankie's put out. And I think we'll play Sakala up front. And I think we'll only see one of the players that's departing if there's a reason. If there's a reason why they've had to go off the pitch, either through injury or if they've picked up an injury or there's something else happening, like they're on a booking and they might need to go off. I've just been reminded there that Alfredo Morelos was on a plane down to London earlier on. Actually, I've seen it today on social media, so he will definitely not be playing. So on that basis, Brian, I think you won't see any of the players departing play their game. I think they've all said their goodbye. I think the game tomorrow for me is about finishing the season on a high, but giving players more minutes, players that we think will be in this squad next season, players who we want to put in the shop window. So I think you're right when it comes to Lowry. I think Lowry should get minutes. But when you look at that list from Frankie, Hadji needs minutes, for example. So for me, Hadji's a must start. We need to get guys like Hadji minutes. So yeah, it'll be an interesting team to see. Other academy players, the under-17s, Scotland under-17s are playing just now in a tournament, and so are England actually. So Bailey Rice is away with Scotland, Zach Lovelace away with England. I think had it not been for the internationals coinciding right now, we might have seen a few more of our better, younger academy players feature. As it is, I think we'll probably see similar to what happened against Hibs, where you've got the kind of other potentially less known academy players. Aaron Lyle, for example, I'd never even heard of Aaron Lyle, and then he gets B Team Player of the Year, or Academy Team Player of the Year. So we might see a few players like that on the bench and a good opportunity to give them more game time. But no, I think everyone that will play tomorrow will be with one eye on next season, giving guys much more needed game time.
Yeah, I definitely think it's about looking to the future now in terms of the starting lineup tomorrow. Now, I want a score prediction from you, Dougie. Well, do you think it'll be a particularly high-scoring game like it was at Ibrox? I remember the game just a couple of weeks ago at Ibrox. That was a particularly high-scoring game. Are you expecting similar?
The last game of the season, I remember there, I'm getting PTSD, was the Hibs 5-each game. Jimmy Nicola in charge.
Oh, I remember that one, yeah. Jordan Russell scored, didn't he?
He did. One of the few games he was actually fit for.
He went off injured, though. I remember.
Did he? There you go. Let's hope that Kieran Dell's not the next Jordan Roster. I've just jinxed it, haven't I? I don't expect 10 goals. St Mirren actually sitting 6 with nothing to play for, and that's both good and bad. We might see them already on the beach, or we might see a team play with complete freedom because they've got nothing, no pressure on them. Who knows how it's going to go tomorrow, but I tell you one thing, Rangers will win. I can say that categorically. But before we go, there was something I was talking to my dad about, actually, that I would just chime in. I love behaviour. I love psychology. And I just made this point to my dad yesterday when he was doing the school run and dropped my eldest off at the house. And I was thinking about it. Over the last couple of years, when you're getting into the next season or you're getting into the season, you set your objectives, or during the season you kind of review your objectives. The year that we won 55, I think it was 1920, I spoke about that kind of pre-season and the Jermaine Defoe comments about everyone went in with the mentality of winning the league. I think that was a huge part of why we won the league. I think every single player went in with siege mentality and unified as we are going to win the league this year, and we did it. I think the season after that, last season, I think the mentality at that point was changed through the season. I think it very quickly shifted, especially from supporters to Seville. I think as supporters, we started to get really carried away with Seville and less focused on the league. And I think, I met Ryan Kent in the shops, and it was the first thing I said to him was about get us to Seville. And I think the whole mentality of the players would have been, let's get us to the Europa League final. This season, I think the mentality of this season was get us into Champions League group stages for the first time in over 10 years. And the reason I'm making this point, and this is my kind of final part, because I'm not on the next podcast, it's my last pod of the season. I'm going to end on a high, and it's not like me to be so positive. I just think as we go into pre-season this year with the buzz around it just now, I just think the whole mentality about the club and the supporters right now is we need to win the league next year. And when we've really set our heads to what we want to achieve, we've done it. We won the league in 55, we got to the Europa League final, and we got our Champions League qualification. Going into this summer, I think the whole team needs to be united in the one objective, which is we need to win the league. I think as supporters, that's what our focus is on. And I think when we're all pulling together, there's no football club like Glasgow Rangers. And if we get our summer signings right, the league title's coming home.
Well, I'm sure we all hope that you're absolutely correct there in your prediction, Dougie. Right, guys, I think we'll call it time there. Big thanks to my guest Dougie for his great insight and transfer chat as always. As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, and we'd ask that you leave us a rating on your preferred podcasting app. We'll be back as usual on our Sunday slot to look back at all the weekend's action. It'll be Craig, myself and Gary on that one. So we'll see you then, but until next time guys, bye for now.